Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today I will be talking about 5 common mistakes that people make with your body butters and how you can fix it. So, this covers hair butters and also whipped body butters. So, on here, I have been sharing a lot of tips on how you can understand how these butters work, how you can understand how some carrier oils work, and I've talked about several carrier oils on this channel and how they're processed and how they are extracted and a lot of information. So if you're new here, my name is Pamela Jacobs. I own Osnov Organics and we sell on Amazon, Walmart, and we sell on our own website as well. So there are several issues that people have with your body butters, and we do get a lot of complaints. Actually, if I have a dollar for each time somebody complain about these problems, I will be a rich lady. There's just top 5 that I chose to discuss today, and obviously over the course of my videos and my channel's existence, you would find how to tackle several other tips. So the first one is had or stiff butter. So this one is a biggie because everybody complains about this sometimes. So when you whip up your butters and it looks all nice, and the next day you find that you cannot even dip your hand into it because it is so stiff and it actually is hard. So there's different textures. Sometimes people want the butters to be fluffy, and I like the dense, fluffy butter for when I am trying to lock in moisture into my hair. But if you're looking for spreadability, that's a different issue altogether. So if you wake up to had stiff body butter, then you've made a few mistakes. You have not balanced your butters and your oils properly, and that's why you end up with had a stiff butter. So how do you solve this problem, or how do you prevent this problem? It is by understanding how these butters work in the first place. So if you have mixed a bunch of had butters that are naturally had, so for example, if you've added Ely peanut butter, a cocoa butter, mango butter, and you have not really balanced it out with naturally soft butters like murumuru butter, tamanu butter, or kukwatsu butter, then that is what you end up with. So in order to avoid the problem of had or stiff butter, you have to balance out your butters properly. So you have to understand the butters that are naturally hard and the butters that are naturally soft, and you have to balance these two butters in order to get a soft, pliable texture. So if you're, I don't know anybody that'll be looking for a hard butter, but for example, if it's in the summer and it's really hot where you live, then you might want to add butter. You might want to incorporate more stiff butters into your mix and less oils, just so you don't have a very like soft butter, or you don't have a butter at all. So you want your butter to still be a butter, then you have to look at the temperature, where you are, and what you want to achieve. So if you're looking for a butter that is dense, then you have to know how to balance these butters properly. So I've shared a few tips on how to balance out your butters and how to incorporate several butters in order to get the right texture that you're looking for. So that's one big problem that people have had, or stiff butter. And the only way to solve this is by adding naturally soft butters that remain soft at room temperature in order to get the right balance so that you don't end up with a hard or stiff butter. So the second problem is an unspreadable butter. So this is when it comes to butters that you're looking to apply to your skin. So if you're looking for butters that you want to use to lock in moisture to your hair, that is probably, you might be wanting a more dense butter. But if you're looking for butters that you apply to your skin, then it has to be spreadable and less dense. So you might find that your butter was really looking nice and you stuck with it, only to wake up to find that your butter is not really spreadable. It is dense. Then the mistake you have made is you've added a very dense butter. So there's dense, and then there is hard, and then there is soft butters. So when it comes to dense butters, shea butter, unrefined shea butter, actually refined shea butter as well, these are very dense butters naturally. So it's very thick and it's not very spreadable if you have not whipped it properly, if you haven't incorporated some oils into it, it would be very dense and it would not be very spreadable on the skin. It would not be suitable to be used as a body butter. So if you find that you wake up to unspreadable butter, then you have made the mistake of adding a very dense butter in a very large amount. So you've added shea butter, for example, which is very dense. So you've added it a lot and you haven't balanced it with oils, appropriate amount of oil in order to make it soft and more spreadable. Also, in order to solve this problem or to curb this problem, you might want to incorporate cetyl alcohol. So even though you're not making an emulsion here, but cetyl alcohol would help your butter to be more spreadable onto the skin. It would give it an easier applicability component. So that would probably solve that issue for you. So the third problem is grainy butter. So actually some butters might even arrive to you grainy. That's because of temperature issues. So right now in the summer, we have very high temperatures. So the butters do travel. And yeah, most companies don't ship with an ice pack because that would make things really expensive. So, like if you're buying a bunch of butters, if you're buying a big quantity, 20 pounds, 40 pounds, then nobody's going to send it in an ice pack. So, you'll find that your butters would likely melt in transit. And when it resolidifies, there's some crystallization that goes on, and the butters can become grainy. Actually, it can arrive to you grainy, or you can whip it up and turn it into a grainy butter. So, some people might even get perfectly textured butters and then turn it into a grainy butter just because they have not really balanced out, they haven't really melted down the butters properly, and they haven't incorporated oils in a proper amount. So in order to curb this, you would need to melt down your butter completely. So I know some people on here, they say, oh, why do you have to melt the butters and need to solidify it again? That's because I want an even temperature with the butter, just so I did not so it doesn't form crystals. Also, you don't want to pour hot carrier oil or warm carrier oil into cold butter and then whip it. That would just form little crystals all around your whipped butter, and you would end up with a grainy whipped butter, which nobody really wants because that's a real waste of time. Like you've gone through all the process of whipping and only to find little bits in your body butter. Nobody wants that. So, in order to solve this, you want to make sure your butter is properly melted down completely and evenly. So, if you don't want to melt it down, you can actually leave it out in the warm temperature for the butter to completely soften. So if you find out the butter is softened, I actually have a video where I have not even butter to melt anything down because the butter was just so soft. And there's some really soft butters that you don't really need to melt down. You can just whip it up straight up. You can do that, but do not go adding like warm stuff into cold stuff. That would just, yeah, that's just, you don't want to do that. Also, if you're making an emulsion, you can actually still end up with grainy stuff because you, for example, did not make sure that the cold and hot are like, yeah, the cold process and the hot process is properly separated, or you haven't ensured that all the components are properly melted down and incorporated into each other while they're still hot. That's, I'm talking about making emulsions now. But then if you're just making wheat butters, just make sure everything is at the same temperature and completely melted down. If you are wanting to melt them down, if they're hard, you're going to melt them down. But if they're soft, you don't need to melt them down. You can just go ahead and whip, and make sure to really go into the whole whipping process to make sure you avoid any grainy particles in your butter and things like that. So number 4 is a liquid butter. So this is actually a problem when it's really hot out, or sometimes it's not even hot out and you have added too much oil into your mix, or you have incorporated a lot of soft butters, a lot of naturally soft butters into your mix, and the temperature is warm out. That's just recipe for liquid butter. Nobody wants that. Like, you want your butter to still be a butter. So what you need to do is to make sure that you balance your butters properly. So if you're using murumuru butter, which is really soft naturally, and if you're using tamnu butter, which is soft naturally, you want to add some cocoa butter to that mix to make sure that you can get something that still looks like a butter but still remains soft. So my preference is actually fluffy, nice textured butters because I really like the feel of butter on my skin. So I do not like lotions at all just because they're so light, and I don't like lotions. I like fluffy butters, so I go for soft butters. and I incorporate some coconut butter. So just know how to balance out your butter. So I have a lot of recipes here that are really balanced, and you can look them up. Some are just two ingredients, some are a bunch of ingredients, but I add all the components that you can add in order to have a balanced butter. If you want to stop butter, don't get it too soft. Don't go pouring too much oil, and because it would just become too liquidy. You're not gonna like it. So just make sure you follow the recipe in order to get what you want. And then the last one is greasy butter. Yeah, I know. We all know that the butter is a butter. There'll still be some level of grease to it, but you don't want it to be too greasy. So, because if you have oils that are dry, like if you have dry butters like Ilipe butter, it's very hard, and you want to whip it up with just an oil, and then you add too much oil, you're going to end up with something very greasy because Ilipe butter is very dry. It's not, even though it's hard, like that's what you expect. You expect it not hard and dry, but it's extremely dry. So it does, if you add too much oil to the mix, it doesn't really absorb like coconut butter. Coconut butter is hard, but it has this chalky texture that ends up absorbing too much oil, so it doesn't end up too greasy. So sometimes you find butters that are really matte. It sounds weird, but it exists. So all you need to do is to know how to incorporate butters. So if you've added too much oil, you're gonna end up with a greasy butter, with butter. So you can add arrowroot powder that's commonly used in order to absorb too much oiliness to make it less greasy, or you can just know how to balance your butters by adding some coconut butter in order to make the butter less greasy. So these are some of the problems that I do have people asking me about, because I mean I'm very experienced with these butters. I sell about 10 different varieties of butters and about 15 variations of these butters. So people tend to ask, how do you balance these butters? Oh, I have problem. Oh, my butter is too greasy, it's too oily, it's too this. These are the tips that I have. And if you have any questions, if you have any problems that you I did not address that you would like to find out how to tackle, definitely leave that in the comment section. And I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I have a ton of videos on here about how you can make simple butters with just two ingredients, not a bunch of ingredients at all, just incorporating two simple ingredients to make really nice fluffy butters. Definitely stay tuned, because as we're heading towards the holidays, I'll be having a ton of videos and tutorials on how you can make your own buddy butters perfect and without these problems, and how you can get the desired texture that you want and all that good stuff. I hope you have enjoyed it once more, and have a great day, and thanks for watching.